All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our first official PrintAustin 2021 event. My name is Paloma Mayorga, and I am the director of PrintAustin. Here with me are Jeanne Claire van Ryzin with Sightlines Magazine and Delita Martin, who is our contemporary print 5x5 juror. After many months of planning, we're so excited to finally be able to share with you a schedule of over 30 events that make up our PrintAustin Festival this year. We're so grateful to all of the artists in the galleries that, despite the challenges of 2020, have all jumped on board with us to continue to bring prints and printmaking focused experiences to you all. So today marks day one of our month-long festival, as well as the opening of our virtual edition of our juried exhibit, the Contemporary Print 5x5, which this year, again, was juried by none other than Delita Martin. A special thank you goes out to Big Medium for partnering with us on this exhibit yet again. They've been our partner for many years now. And also a special thank you to Sightlines for sponsoring today's talk with our juror. For those of you who are not familiar with the Contemporary Print, it is PrintAustin's annual international juried exhibit, and it serves to bring the work of printmakers from across the world to Austin. This year's exhibit is a little bit different than in previous years. In the past, we've provided space for about 30 or more artists to exhibit one work each in the Big Medium Gallery. And this year, in light of the pandemic, Kathy Savage, who is the founder and president of PrintAustin, and I wanted to have this opportunity really benefit the selected artists by providing more exposure, as well as a $500 stipend to help alleviate some of the financial pressures that many artists have faced since March. So the 5x5 in the exhibition title refers to the 5 artists who were selected, who each got to present 5 works. And with the help of Big Medium, we have put together this virtual exhibit that includes a really nice image gallery so that you can see each image individually, along with the artist statement, so you can read more about that, as well as a 3D virtual gallery that you can actually step into and move around as if you were in a physical gallery space. I will drop the link here in just a second so that you can explore that. Let me see. Yeah, we'll share that with you in just a moment so that you can explore that further. And then my last announcement before handing it off to Jeanne Claire is that our exhibition catalogs for the contemporary print are finally here. And they're going to be available for purchase. So please stick around to the end of the talk, and I will tell you how you can actually purchase a copy. And then I'll also make some other announcements so that you can hear more about other events that we're having or that we have coming up. So now, without further ado, I'd like to welcome Jeanne Claire van Ryzin, Editor-in-Chief of Sightlines, who will be leading today's discussion with Delita.
Thank you, Paloma. My name is Jeanne Claire van Ryzin, and I am the editor and founder of Sightlines Magazine, which is a nonprofit arts and culture magazine based here in Austin, Texas. You can find us online at sightlinesmag.org. I'm very happy tonight to introduce Delita Martin, who is an artist, a printmaker, and founder of Black Box Press in Huffman, Texas. Delita's work combines printmaking along with drawing, painting, hand stitching, and collage to create a visual language that offers potent insight into the marginalization of Black women. Her vibrant, monumentally scaled prints are nationally recognized and internationally as well. And she's had a solo show at the National Museum of Women in the Arts. Recently, she was named one of 16 African-American artists to watch by the International Review of African-American Art. And she was also the keynote speaker at the Mid-America Print Council Conference at Kent State University. Through her Black Box Press Foundation, Martin has recently started the initiative Art as Activism. Its goal is to support artists in the production of a solo exhibition, to bring focus to show how art can be used both to provoke dialogue and to urge social change. So welcome, Delita. It's delightful to have you here.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
Sure. I thought tonight, since we just had an introduction to the catalog and the show and Paloma's description of what the 5x5 is, if you could talk a little bit about what was it like curating in a pandemic, seeing all this work online, having to select only 5 artists?
Well, it was tough. Let me just start with that. I was really excited when she approached me in reference to during the show, and I was really excited because, during this pandemic, we've watched what artists were doing, and it's really the work that is coming out of this pandemic is just incredible. It's unfortunate to be in the studio or confined to an area under the circumstances, the political circumstances, the life circumstances. But at the same time, it's almost like a renaissance that's happening because artists are creating in a way that they've never created before. So I was really looking forward to jurying the show because I wanted to see, wow, this gives me an opportunity to see what artists are, or even more artists are doing. And because it's an international juried show, I was able to see what artists were doing in other countries as well as here in the States. It was difficult because I was like, only 5? Like, gosh, can I do maybe just 1 or 2 more? It was really a difficult decision because the artists that applied, they were creating work in such a groundbreaking way. I mean, all of them deserve a round of applause for the work that they were producing. So it was a really tough decision in that way. But it was wonderful introduction to new artists and just see what other artists were doing. So it was wonderful.
What you selected 5 artists, all of whom have pretty different printmaking practices, printmaking approaches. Can you talk a little bit about why you went that route?
Yeah, and I think it has a lot to do with my own practice. When I initially got out of graduate school for printmaking, it was like, if you go to school for printmaking, you're a printmaker. If you go for painting, you're a painter. And, if you draw, you draw. But I love seeing people push boundaries, particularly in printmaking, and not staying within this category or this box. And it's like, redefining prints, having us look at printmaking in a different way. And I feel like all of the artists that I selected were doing that. And so I thought it would make a very exciting show, a very dynamic show, and really get people thinking about what is printmaking, what makes a print a print.
What kind of trends did you see in then the work that you selected in terms of what makes a contemporary print today? Do you think it's a variety of approaches? Is it sort of busting medium?
I think that it's for me, I think it's the various approaches to printmaking. One thing that I love about printmaking itself, just in general, is that we can both produce prints using the same process, but there's 50 different ways to work within that one process. But to see artists who are printing on different surfaces, who are combining mediums, not just combining print mediums, but also combining other mediums within the work, I find that very fascinating, and I love seeing when artists do that.
Combining different mediums is very much your part of it, so much a part of your own practice. I mean, you stitch, you draw, and you paint, you layer lots of things. Can you talk a little bit about your own practice in printmaking?
Yeah, I actually came to printmaking. I tell people I came to printmaking late, so I didn't actually start making prints until which I want to say like 2003. Maybe, yeah, about 2003. And I had never worked on a press before. It was just totally new to me, not even hand pulling prints. And so it was my undergraduate degree was in drawing at Texas Southern University, and I felt like, and believe me, this is totally untrue, but I felt like I had reached or done all I could do with drawing. So it's like, what do I do now? And printmaking just kind of made sense. And so it was, I looked at printmaking as the next step in drawing. So that's why I was initially attracted to it. So it's like, let me replace my pencil with a carving tool or, a crayon. So for me, printmaking is an extension of drawing.
Okay.
And so I, went to graduate school, graduated, literally doing just straight printmaking. And I decided that I wanted to go into the studio full time, but I wanted to challenge myself. And I was like, how do I challenge myself? Because I'm leaving my job. So whatever I go and do, it has to count. I got to make it count.
Yeah.
And so I get in the studio and I challenge myself on a couple of fronts. So one, I was working mostly 22 by 30 in size. So I was like, I want to work larger. How do I work larger? Two, I wanted the work to have more intimacy to it, more of a personal story to it. So that was a challenge for me. And then I was like, I wanted to challenge myself to be a creator, not just a printmaker. I wanted to get into the studio and I wanted to create. I wanted to have that freedom to create, but also have the freedom to identify as a printmaker. I talked to friends and they're like, oh, I don't want to put myself in a box. So I'm just going to say I'm an interdisciplinary artist. I identify as a printmaker and I'm very comfortable with that. So yeah, I bring in painting, I bring in drawing. So I'm still a printmaker. So I started to do that and there was a freedom that was just, I fell in love with, and it worked for me. And so every day, I think it took me a little while to really get used to creating in that way. So it was literally every day telling myself, it's okay for you to create in this way. This is your space. This is your work, and it's okay. So giving myself permission to be the artist that I was supposed to be. It was a challenge, but it was well worth it.
You had a pretty interesting experience when you were an undergraduate at Texas Southern University with Dr. John Biggers. I'm wondering if you could tell that.
So my father studied with Dr. Biggers. So I grew up with all of these incredible stories of, him teaching my father. And so I got to meet him when I think I was about 12 or 13. And my father comes home and he's like, get all of your work together. And I made this little poster board portfolio and it was taped and I had all my work in it. And I had no idea where we were going, and we drove to Texas Southern, and Dr. Biggers gave me a critique. And it was really interesting because I'm this little kid and none of my friends were into drawing in that way. And I was like, who can I tell that John Biggers is looking at my work? But what stood out to me the most that I remember is him saying, never miss an opportunity to uplift your people through your work. And so every single day, that's my golden rule for my studio. When I produce my work, that's always in the back of my mind, is being able to uplift in my work, to uplift my community, the women in my community through my work. And so I've tried to do that. But that was one of those moments that kind of I guess solidified for me that I was going to be an artist. I didn't know how that was going to work out, but I was going to be an artist, and this is what I wanted to do. It was a moment of confirmation for me.
Yeah. In your prints, you have a lot of reoccurring. You've got a visual language of your own going on. There's reoccurring patterns. There's circles. References to Ife masks, pattern sewing. Excuse me. Can you talk a little bit about how you have developed your visual vocabulary?
Yes. So I think I was developing early on, I was developing a vocabulary, but I didn't realize that that's what it was. So every now and then I would take out my work and do a self-critique. And I think that's very important for artists to do. It's like, what is the commonality between all of these works? What am I seeing here? I'm seeing women, I'm seeing jars, I'm seeing birds. And then to ask those questions of yourself, like, why? The why? What does this mean to me? And so I realized that I was putting, creating this language in the work using objects that were common to me, objects that kind of stuck with me. And I think the objects came about because of my grandmother. My grandmother lived with us, and I spent a lot of time with her. And she used to keep these mason jars on her dresser, and they were filled with everything. So you had buttons in there, you had needles, you had little miniature perfume bottles, you had pendants, you had all kinds of things that she kept, little knickknacks that she kept in these mason jars and Folgers coffee cans. And every now and then she would pour them out on the bed, and she would go through and she would tell me where she got them. There was always a story. There was a story behind every single object that was in the jars. And at that, she was teaching me a language at that point, and I didn't realize it. So growing up, I learned early on to associate people, places, and things and stories with objects. So she was formulating this vocabulary in my mind. She was teaching me another language, essentially. And so when I got older, and I really didn't realize this until I got to graduate school and I started looking at my early works, I was like, wait a minute, this is a language and I need to explore this more. And so I began to think about the objects that was being placed in the work, what they meant to me. And then I realized that it was a universal language. It wasn't just my language, but it was a universal language in that every object that I put in the work, I don't care where you're from, what demographics you're from, what race, whatever, you have had some interaction with the safety pin. You've had an interaction with the pans. You've had an interaction with bowls and jars. And so it starts a conversation between the viewer and the work. So I'm okay if you walk up to one of my pieces and you say, wait a minute, my grandmother used to have, a mixing bowl like that in her kitchen, or my mom had one, or I had this. That's the conversation. The conversation started. So I feel like I've done what I was supposed to do as an artist in that way with talking. I'm happy to share my story, but when you can connect with the work in that way, I've started a dialogue, and that's what's important to me in the work.
Mm-hmm. I'm wondering, your prints, or your most recent ones, are extremely large. They're very large scale. Can you talk about your idea about the monumentality of the size?
Yes, scale was very important to me because the women, Black women, have just historically been marginalized. And so scale was important because it changes the conversation. When you walk into a room and you have these just large scale works of these women, are you the viewer or are you being viewed? So it changes the conversation between the viewer and the work. And that was important for me because these women have been marginalized throughout history. And when you walk into the gallery, you will see me, you will recognize me. And there's this confrontation that happens with the viewer. And that was important.
Are you, the figures in your work, are they based on actual life drawing that you've done, or?
Initially, they were not. So that was very interesting. So when I initially started out, again, it was, the women were representational of all the women in my community, women that raised me, women that, that I was surrounded by. So you could see my grandmother's eyes, you could see my mother's lips, you might see the stance or the movements of the woman down the street. And so these became the whole idea of the great mother, and that we are one as women. And so initially I realized that they were spirit figures in the work. And so I began to think about what would it be like to actually have women that I knew in the work. Because I've never been interested in portraiture from the traditional sense. I've been interested in, I want to capture that one moment. I want to capture your spirit in the work. I could take a photograph of you if I wanted to see you, but I'm very interested in what makes you, what makes you uniquely you, your inner spirit, your inner self. And so I remember seeing a portrait of Jeanne Lacey, stained glass artist, that was done by Dr. Biggers, and the portrait looked nothing like her, but when you saw it, you instantly knew it was her. He had captured her spirit. And I knew that that's what I wanted to do with portraits. And so I started to bring in models in that were my family. And it was very interesting to see how they interacted in the work with the spirit figures. And, this idea of how we transition in spiritual spaces and how we interact and marry into that space. And so my more recent work has been portraits of my mother, my sisters, extended family. And I've done more self-portraits, I think, than I've ever done before. But to see myself and to see, women that I know and that I love interact in this world, in this veilscape, what I call the veilscape, it has been a very spiritual journey, really. That's the best way I can put it.
I'm fascinated by your use of mixed media. You have everything from, as common as thread to as precious as gold leaf.
Mm-hmm.
And all of these choices are intentional. Yes. So I was wondering if we could just talk about that a little bit.
So they're intentional from the perspective that, so I like to work as intuitively as possible. And so for me, if printing doesn't work, then I'll draw it. And if that doesn't work, then we'll collage it in. And if that doesn't work, we'll paint it in. We'll do whatever needs to be done to tell the story in the way that it needs to be told. But the layering of the mediums also represent time and space for me, because each medium sits on the surface very differently. An etching sits on the surface very different from a lithograph. Something collaged in, fits very differently than, say, something drawn or painted in. And so you have all these different layers in the work, which for me represents time. It's that time and space and dimension that happens in the work to create this story, this history, this language.
Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about your Black Box Press and how you started it. And
yes. So I had an idea, I guess, in graduate school that, I thought ultimately I didn't really want to stay in the classroom, that I wanted to be independent artist. I wanted to work as a full-time artist. And like always, I'm that person that I never know how it's going to happen. I just know that it will, and we'll figure out the rest later. So it was in my mind to start a studio. So in graduate school, at the end of the semester of teaching, being a TA, I would buy the supplies off the students who were not going to return to printmaking. Maybe they're taking an elective. So I'd buy the paper, I'd buy inks and brares and all the whatever supplies they had for sale, I would just buy it off the students. And so I rented a studio in the basement of a church, and I started doing free demos and workshops, and having people come into the studio and just really trying to figure out at that point what Black Box Press would really ultimately be. Would it be a community print shop or would it be a private studio? And it ultimately became my private studio. And it was a really good learning experience, but I was able to, over a number of years, kind of figure out the formula of what Black Box Press is, what it's become today.
Right. And recently you've taken it even one step further too with your Art as Activism Fund and this amazing opportunity, which essentially happened within the pandemic era. So I was wondering.
Yes, it did. It did,
So I'd love to talk about that and what the intention was and how it's structured and everything.
So we've just gone through so much this past year. 2020 has just been, there's so many adjectives to use, but it's been a very trying time. And so I want to say like 2 days after the George Floyd murder, my son and I were in the studio talking, and we just started talking, and it was really awesome because I was able to talk to him as a mother, get him to understand, my fears for him as a Black mom, as for him being a young Black man and how he has to navigate his space. But it also shed light for me to get to know my son in a very different way. And so I asked him, I said, well, can I draw you? Let me pose for you, because that's my voice. That's how I work through things. And he was like, yeah, sure. So he posed for me, and he's a kid that has always worn hoodies, which scares me to death. That is like his clothing of choice since he was 5 years old. And we've got notes from school. Can you ask him not to wear his hoodie? And it just so much. And so I said, well, you always have these graphic hoodies. If you could say something, what would you say? And he said the most simple and profound thing to me. He said, let me breathe. And it wasn't asking for permission. It was stating what his right is as a human being. And I found that so powerful. And so we worked on the piece. He helped me carve and mixed ink and all this stuff for me. But it was a bonding moment. And so we posted the image on Instagram, and I received several calls and messages wanting to purchase. And I was like, no, this is a gift to my son, but I'll let him know that you were interested. And he says, well, hey, Mom, why don't we make some prints and we can sell them? And I'm like, literally like, this child is really just trying to make some money. And he was like, no, we could donate it. And I was like, really? And so it just kind of gave me that kick to say, okay, let's support him while he's in this, mind frame. Let's see what's happening. And so I said, okay. So we started looking at organizations. And there were a lot of organizations out there, but we weren't finding what we wanted. And I don't think it was that anyone wasn't actively, doing things in the community, but there was no track record of it. So you go to the website and the website's dormant for a year or something like that, but you've heard that they were doing things. And so I was like, I'm not seeing what we want. Let's start our own. Be the change that we want to see. And so we stepped out on faith and we started working on it. I pulled Dad in on it and pulled some friends in on it and my son. And so Black Box Foundation is up and running. We support artists in creating exhibitions. Each artist receives a $5,000 unrestricted grant. You can go to blackboxpressfoundation.org, and all the information's there. The link to apply on Submittable is there as well. But I'm just so excited to be able to support artists. And, I talk to friends all the time, and, not everybody is made to be out marching. Some people, you have talents that are better served elsewhere. And the work that has been created during this pandemic that talks about what's happening politically, what's happening socially, anything from saving the environment to, you know, what's going on in politics. I mean, the voices have just been like loud and clear. And I personally believe that, you know, art changes people. You know, it can change hearts, it can change minds. And when you change hearts and minds, can change systems, and systems can change lives. And so being on the, you know, on the forefront of that and helping artists to be able to exhibit their work in different spaces, we're just really excited. So we're working with other organizations to be host venues for the exhibitions, which we're very excited about. It's a national so far. We're hoping to go international, or we will at least in the next year or so. But right now we're national, and we're calling artists from all over the United States to, you know, apply. And we are building relationships with galleries and organizations in other states for artists to exhibit there as well. So I'm really interested in this, I guess, this cross pollination between artists and galleries and building these relationships, because it's interesting to see it happen on the internet. Well, let's see if we can get it, you know, out into this space, you know, into real space. And so that's what the foundation is doing.
Yeah. I mean, when you and I talked earlier this week, we were talking about how one thing with all the, you know, with everything taking place online, like this talk and the pandemic, is that there has been a new level of collaboration and kind of an awareness of what's going on elsewhere that oftentimes there
Yes.
wasn't in the art world when everybody's in their little, you know, kind of head down, busy, in their own backyard, in their own place. But now we all kind of popped up online and took a look at what's going on. It seems like with the Artist Activism Fund is what you're trying to make that a reality by
Yes.
by taking it to something real.
Yeah, and you know, we have to be creative right now, but
Mm-hmm.
it's still doable. I mean, I tell people all the time, I deal in the impossible. I believe in making the impossible possible. And so we'll figure it out, you know, and the galleries have been wonderful. Right now, our first partnerships are with Art League Houston and with the Galveston Art Center, and just the ideas, exchanging ideas. Well, we have an outdoor space, or, you know, we can do performances, you know, we can just, you know, just the creativity of putting the shows together and combining that with the creativity that the artists are putting into their work. I feel like it's going to be just dynamic exhibitions all around.
Because I'm guessing there's probably a lot of artists who are in on this talk. Could you talk a little bit about what the Artist Activism Fund is looking for? Is it open to any medium? Does the work need to address certain issues?
Yeah, so we're looking to really redefine activism. So a lot of people think, you know, when we talk about, you know, artist activism, that you're, you know, you're out there and you're talking about the politics and you're talking. I mean, if you want to save the environment, let's save the environment. You know, if you want to, you know, you have an issue in gentrification, if you want to talk about politics that's happening in Washington, if you want to talk about, you know, the penal system, you know, it's about change. It's about this broad idea of change. And so we're looking for proposals that get people thinking, that get your community thinking about, maybe we should take a second look at this, or maybe I want to get involved and do something. We are looking at all mediums. So if you're a performance artist, if you're into ceramics, you don't have to be a printmaker. You can be a painter. It doesn't matter. So I mean, everybody's voice is different, but so just whatever medium you're in, you're welcome to apply. And so the $5,000 is an unrestricted grant that's meant to help you with producing the body of work. being able to get framing, being able to, buy supplies. If you need a babysitter because you need to focus on something, you could spend the money on that. So one of the things that I thought about when I, early on in my career, it was very difficult for me to find a grant or assistance that would allow me to, I guess, use the funds in a way that would allow me to really, I guess, address my personal circumstances. And so that's what I wanted to do, was to be able to help artists, who childcare is a real thing. you know
Yes.
um you know it's like, well, I have to stay at work these extra 20 hours this week because I still have to keep the lights on. Well, maybe this will take a little bit of that pressure off, that you can get back in the studio, produce this work. We can put this amazing show together that will help you in a way that would grow your career.
Hmm.
So
Right.
that's what we're hoping to do.
I know when you and I talked, we talked about how it's not about creating things that go back to, the old normal, that there has to be a
Right.
new normal and
Yeah,
in
it's
what we create going
and
forward. So
scary good. Right.
scary wonderful is what you kept
Scary,
saying.
yeah, that's right.
Absolutely
Scary
scary
wonderful. it's
wonderful.
it's it's a very scary time, because as artists we have to rethink what our careers are going to be. What does that look like for us? What does,
Mhm.
living and working as an artist, what does that really mean now? Because it's changed, the definitions changed, and we didn't have a playbook to begin with, so we're having to shift gears even now. And it's a scary time for artists, but it's also a wonderful time for artists, because I've talked to so many artists who have talked about, oh my God, this is a horrible circumstance for us to be in, but at the same time, this introspective moment that we've had, to really sit down with our work, meant a lot. So
Mhm.
yeah.
What have you personally been doing? I know we talked about this earlier too, that some people have found the ability to just kind of charge ahead with lots of new work. Others have
Mhm.
been more introspective. Where has your practice been during the pandemic?
Um, I have been working on a new body of work. Literally looking at, I have an exhibition that's coming up that will be opening March 19th at the Art Museum of East Texas. And the show is called Conjure. And so I'm really looking at common objects, again, using the symbols that I use in my work, and how I use these objects in my work to conjure. And so this whole spirituality, addressing that, continuing to address that in my work. But I've really just really got into the studio and just continuing to work. That hasn't stopped. I'm in the studio a lot. My day usually starts probably around 5:30 in the morning. I'm a morning person, so I'm in the studio all day, every day. I keep saying I need to retrain myself on how to relax because I don't know how to do that anymore. But yeah, I'm in the studio every day.
Wow, wow,
Yeah.
and making.
Yeah, I was here on
Um,
Christmas. I'm in the studio.
is your studio connected to your house or close by your house or?
No, no, well, my studio's in my backyard.
Mm.
Right now we have it's I guess it's about a 1900 square foot space. So I have a letterpress section, as well as the regular print studio etching presses and litho presses, and so just depends on what I'm working on.
Mhm.
Presses in the
Do you have an
garage.
assistant?
No, I do not. I typically use an assistant on a project basis. So I may have someone come in for a couple of weeks and work, and then I'm in the studio flying solo.
Wow,
Yeah.
good for you.
And then I get that free labor from my husband and my son. So, free labor is always good.
Terrific.
Yeah.
Should we see if Paloma's got any questions that are
Sure, that'd be great.
If she can pop back on.
Hello.
Hello.
That was great. Thank you guys so much. Let's see. We had a couple of comments, people coming in to say hi to Delita. So we had Carol King, who was coming in from Tucson. I'm just going to read her comment because I think it was really nice. And in case you want to respond, Delita, she said, just writing from Tucson to tell Delita how deeply moving her work is for me. I am a trained printmaker from way back when, who now works in mixed media primarily. My grandma taught me to make clothes when I was 12. Fabric and sewing were both so important as early influences. I love what you shared about your grandma teaching you about objects as a visual language. Thank you, Delita, for your heart, your poetic being, and your gorgeous work.
Thank you.
She also said, I just want to let you know that I am hearing and seeing you, and I'm so grateful for the depth of your sharing. And I'm so moved by the way you spoke just now about spirit figures. I'm in awe of the ways you capture essence and inner spirit. Yeah, and then she asked if you remember David Contreras, a printmaker you met a summer or two ago from Tucson, because that's how she learned about.
Yes, absolutely, yes.
Cool. And then Caitlin Clay so that the Art Museum of Southeast Texas is excited to host your upcoming exhibit in March. I don't know if there's any other questions, if people want to drop them into the chat wherever you're viewing from, and we'll be able to answer them here.
Yes, I'm very excited about the upcoming exhibition. I can't wait. So I spent a lot of, like I said, I was able to get into the studio and really work on new bodies of work. So it's been amazing.
Awesome. And is it the mixed media pieces that you'll be including?
Yes. And the whole idea, one of the concepts that I've been looking at is really the idea that God cannot be contained. And so the part of the images are coming off of the page, and, the idea that we cannot be contained as individuals as well. So exploring a lot of time to explore different concepts and rethink some earlier concepts, because I work in bodies of work, and each body of work is really a continuation of a previous conversation that I've had. So when I think about identity, because that's what my work is about at its very core, it's about identity, but I think about spiritual identity. How do we become the spiritual other? There's physical identity. So I use the mask in my work. The patterns and the textures change the appearance of the women. And so the mask is symbolic, it's implied, sometimes it's literal. So there's all different things that I've had the opportunity to, which I think is important, to spend time with the work. It's important that you spend time with the work so that you can understand where it's really coming from and what it's really about.
Totally. And I haven't had the pleasure of seeing your work in person, but through the images that you've shared with us and that we've been sharing with the public in preparation for the talk, the figures in your work are really they have such a presence. And it looks like you are one of the figures in the photos. So like in the photo that we showed at the beginning of the talk, where you have the two works behind you. So yeah, I think, which actually is a good transition into one of the questions, which says, how did you transition to such large format work?
Wow. That's actually a very story. So I'm working in the studio. I just left the university. As I said before, that was one of my challenges to myself, was to challenge about size. Well, I received a phone call in reference to an exhibition opportunity, and it was literally my first solo museum exhibition. And she'd seen my work online, And she says, well, we have this really small room, and well, it wasn't really small, but it would fit your 22 by 30 works. And I was like, okay. I was like, but I was thinking more of this. And I had one piece that was a fairly, I think it was about 3 feet in height, and which was really big for me. And she's like, well, this is really big. Do you think, are you sure you're going to be able to have enough if we put you to this 1,200 square foot? So I was like, oh yeah, I got it. Of course I will. Yeah. And then she left and I fell apart. And I was like, oh God, I got to make this happen. But it was me putting myself in a position to, again, hold myself accountable for what I said I wanted to do. And so, I'm pretty sure I would have done it anyway, but putting myself out there to say, yes, give me the 1,200 square foot space, and I will have the work that, these large scale pieces to fill that space. And so it was my way of holding myself accountable for what I wanted to do. It wasn't easy, but
definitely filling a large space is never easy.
No.
Let's see it.
I think there was one more question. Maybe if you could repeat what the deadline for the grant is and where people can go to find more information on it.
Yes. The deadline for the grant is February 1st, and the announcement of the artists who will receive the grant will be February 22nd. And we will actually this is our first round. Our second round will go up in June of 2021. And so we'll be making that announcement as it gets closer to that time. 2 artists will be selected. You can go to blackboxpress.org, and there is a link there on the Artist Activism Fund page that will take you directly to the application. And there's a $25 application fee, but you can access the application through the website there.
Great. And I see that they've just put the application website in the comments there, so people can find out about it. And
thank you.
So.
Right. Yeah. And one last question for the application. Ann Johnson asks if curators can apply for the grant.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
If curators can apply for the grant, or is it specifically for artists?
Yes, curators can apply for the grant. I mean, that's a form of art, curating these beautiful spaces. Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, is there any other things that you guys would like to cover, or?
I don't think so. I think
I would just like to thank you for having me as a juror, and thank you for having this wonderful conversation and letting me talk your ear off about art. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us. And I know that the juror responsibility is a really big one. You look through so many applications. So we're really excited about the artists who you selected. And like Jeanne Claire mentioned, like their work is so different from one another. So it's really a good survey of contemporary printmaking. And I don't know if we mentioned this before, but the artists that were selected were from the United States. We had somebody from Slovenia, from Australia as well. So it's really great to have you be like the connecting piece in this really great community of printmakers that we have.
Like I said, I was so excited about seeing the applications that came through, and I was like, wow, they're doing so many wonderful things. And so it was just great to be able to pull together a show that really asked the question or challenge of rethinking printmaking. What is printmaking? So yeah.
Definitely. Cool. Well, thank you again, and thank you, Jeanne Claire, again for sponsoring our talk and for leading it. You always lead such insightful and meaningful conversations with artists, so we're happy to have you both. And thanks to everyone who tuned in tonight. If you Oh, if you would like to actually purchase one of our exhibition catalogs, and it has some really great images of the work, we will be making it available as part of our drive-through fundraiser, which will benefit our 2021 programming. And we'll go ahead and drop the link into the chat. And the fundraiser is being hosted through our Print Expo site. So it's printexpo.org/shop. And then additionally, if you enjoyed our talk tonight and would like to contribute to both PrintAustin and the Black Box Press Foundation, any donations that we receive tonight will be splitting between the two organizations. So we're going to go ahead and also drop a link so that you can donate directly from the chat, or you can go to PrintAustin.org, and we have a support button that you can click on there. And while you're on the PrintAustin site, I invite you all to continue to explore our website. Again, we have over 30 events planned out for the following month. And those are, in-person exhibits. We have workshops and demonstrations in case you want to learn more about the printmaking techniques behind the works that you'll be seeing. And finally, be sure to check out our Print Expo conference that we have coming up on February 6th. You can find more information at printexpo.org. And that, just to give you a little context, we've reimagined our annual print fair, which usually was held here in Austin, but we've reimagined it to be all virtual. We'll be having over 60 artists who will be exhibiting work, and you'll be able to purchase their work either directly from them or directly from us. And then our one-day conference, which is a day from like 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. on February 6th, and you can register to receive the link to that. And this is all free and open to the public, so please check it out, and that's at printexpo.org. Okay, well, thank you all again, and yeah, any last words, you're welcome to jump in as well.
Thank you, I've enjoyed it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome. Oh, and sorry, one last thing before we shut off. Just wanted to give a special thank you to Speedball as well, as they helped bring Delita Martin as our juror this year. So thank you, Speedball, for all you do for printmakers. Cool. Well, thank you so much again.
Thank you.